9:30 and we've got quorum, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation. And a notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? A seconder? Second Al. All those in favour? None opposed. Motion carried. A motion to adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held January 26, 2021. Brett, seconder.
Second.
Is Al. All those in favour? None opposed. Motion carried. Elise, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Through the chair, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, and I can see that someone wants to speak, but I don't have the ability to promote them right now. So if you wouldn't mind, we may just take some time while council moves through the rest of the agenda, and I'll let you know when we have that ability to allow participants to speak again. And I might just ask that we reorder the agenda to allow that time to occur once we're able to. That works?
Okay, that'll probably work. Maybe after correspondence or something like that, or delegations. Okay, moving on, we'll go to the mayor's report. I don't have a lot to say, except construction has started, or is expected to start shortly at Sharp Road. I went down there for a photo op on Friday with Melody McCrory from the Housing Association. And I think that photograph is published in the Westerly this week. And secondly, with regards to Sharp Road, we're working with the Tal-o-qui-aht First Nation on an appropriate blessing, and that blessing will be done under COVID protocol if it still applies, and will be kept private. Any questions on that before moving on? Okay. We have a delegation from Ursula Bank, Island Work Transitions. Do we have this delegation, Elise?
Yes, I do have the ability now to promote folks to presenters. So Ursula, I'm going to unmute you and allow you to share your screen for up to 10 minutes. And anyone who wanted to use the Q&A section or the public comment period can go ahead and sign up again using the Q&A, and we'll deal with that after the delegation.
Hi, Ursula, are you there? Ursula, you're muted.
There, now, can you see me?
I can hear you, but we can't, and now I can see you.
Perfect. And you can hear me, you can see me, but you can't touch me.
Well, maybe later.
So I'm here to make a presentation to Mayor and Council, this time on a different topic. And I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to present on behalf of the older adults of this area. As a community liaison for Island Work Transitions, Inc., I have been working with community organizations, facilitating the building of networks within our region, creating strategies and developing projects that will stabilize and diversify the regional economy here on the West Coast. Ultimately, our goal is to align workforce supply and demand within our region's sustainable development goals for the long term. And the older worker factors into that. In 2019, I was appointed to the Council of Advisors to the Office of the BC Seniors Advocate. I became a member of their Rural and Remote Committee and continue to lobby on behalf of our rural and remote communities on the West Coast. And my focus is aging in our communities as long as we wish to. And what does that mean for people like myself? So I'm here to present on behalf of the West Coast Senior Services Network. In the spring of 2020, we organized into a coalition of senior service providers. Taking a collaborative approach, we developed a strategy to bring Better at Home program to the West Coast. This was in direct response to what Isabel McKenzie was telling all the COA members across the province that, the province is not interested in developing any, bricks and mortar senior service homes anymore. So, or at this point in time, so we have to create something without walls. So this is the closest that we could come to something like this. So this is a spin-off of back in May, since COVID. The group coordinated themselves, met on a monthly basis to discuss issues surrounding aging in our community as a perspective from service providers. The Better at Home program, which is province-wide, funded by the government of BC, as well as the United Way, managed by the United Way of Lower Mainland. Its goal is to help seniors remain independent at home and stay connected with their communities. So that's in line with what our thinking is as well. We are in the process of exploring the Better at Home program. We investigated their pilot projects into rural and remote communities, and they chose Quesnel. Well, they are far less remote than we are here. So since then, the terminology of what rural and remote really means to funding agencies. Now I'm on a different board belonging to I can't even remember the name, but we're meeting on the 22nd of February to discuss the definition of rural and remote for island communities. So getting back to the Better at Home program, it supports seniors who wish to age in place with dignity, stay connected socially, and prevent social isolation, especially amongst older adults who are most vulnerable. So the Better at Home program provides a range of non-medical home support services such as housekeeping, grocery shopping, home repair, friendly visiting, yard work, transportation to appointments. And services are delivered through local nonprofit organizations by volunteers and or paid workers. So this also opens up employment opportunities as well. So community-based services vary from community to community and are designed to complement existing services. Volunteers, contractors, paid staff from local nonprofit organizations are trained to provide Better at Home services. What are the common standards to all Better at Home programs? Although there are many different differences amongst each program, there are also commonalities. There are service fees which are established based on an income sliding scale and ensures that services are free for low-income seniors and market rate for seniors with an income above BC average. So all volunteers providing services directly to seniors must have a criminal record check, and programs providing local advisory have a local advisory committee for guidance, advocacy, and help. And help support the integration of the program into the community and be responsive to seniors' needs. Programs submit progress reports to the provincial office to monitor performance. That's through the United Way Lower Mainland. And program coordinators engage in a community of practice, which includes sharing learning activities, discussing best practices on an online portal, and meeting annually for training opportunities, participation in collective dialogue. These activities help develop capacity of each local program to best serve and support the older adults in BC. Now, who pays for the Better at Home program? The government of BC, through the Ministry of Health, provides funding to the United Way of the Lower Mainland to manage the Better at Home program across BC. Individual community organizations will also accept donations, raise funds, and encourage volunteer participation Older adults who receive better at home services may pay a fee based on their income, and some services may be free. These fees for service are fed back into the local program in order to serve more seniors. So funding is reserved to each local program based on the demographics of the community, such as the number of seniors residing in that community, income of seniors, et cetera, et cetera. The funding allocation will be different in each community because of their distinct community characteristics. Having said that, so I'll take it just, that was reading off my written submission. So we decided as we were, we'd invited the United Way Lower Mainland a representative to attend our meeting, and she presented us with the best scenario for our organization to submit a proposal. And she suggested that we do a region as a whole, meaning the West Coast region, because the city of Port Alberni already has their Better at Home, but it doesn't reach us here. So the logic behind it is we have First Nations communities. There is also a Better at Home program, First Nations Better at Home program. So we have to investigate further as to what that means and what it represents. But if we do the West Coast region and we take the population combined, it expands our funding resources. This was one of the issues, and we resolved it by saying we are a Pacific Rim region, so the West Coast. And how that folds out, we've invited First Nations to attend our meetings. We did have Tla-o-qui-aht Representative Lisa Morgan. She's with the community programmer there. She attends our meetings. So the representation of First Nations, that it isn't as full as I would like to see it, but it is coming, little bits. And if we can bring in a First Nations perspective, then it would help deliver that aspect so that all the residences on the West Coast get coverage if they need it for non-medical services. And then we also, in one of our recent meetings, we reached out to build a model that can somehow integrate the medical perspective of those newly released from hospital care or medical care that may be in need of non-medical service. So to integrate somehow, liaise with them to facilitate ongoing services. So.
Pardon me, Ursula, you've just got about 10 seconds left, and I'm hoping you can conclude your remarks and make a request to council.
What we need, next steps is that we are interested in bringing the United Way Better at Home program to the West Coast. And what do we need? We need a letter of support from Mayor Council in our efforts to bring that program to the West Coast region. That's it. Any questions? Thank you for the time acknowledgement.
Thanks, Ursula. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Chalmers.
I'm happy to move that council writes a letter of support for the, sorry, I'm on the wrong one.
It would be addressed, Councillor Chalmers, I would like to suggest that the letter of support be addressed to the Better United Way Lower Mainland Better at Home program. And then if you would like, I could send a template to the
That'd be great.
Yes, thank you. So a letter. So I'll make a motion for council to write a letter of support based on Ursula's template for the West Coast Seniors Network. So.
Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Anderson. Is there any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried. Thanks, Ursula.
Through the chair, this is Elise speaking. Just letting you know that I've connected with one person who would like to use the public comment period, and that's Eileen Floody, and she'd like to speak to item 8.2, the Arts, Culture, and Heritage Grants Report. If council would allow the interjection of that item at this point.
I think that's acceptable. Any objections from anybody? No. So
Thank you. I'm going to unmute you, Eileen, for up to 2 minutes, but you won't be able to share your screen.
Hi, thanks for listening. For a change, I'm going to be saying something positive, and the positive is that I'd like to thank the District of Tofino for supporting the arts, culture, and heritage sector with the grants, and also the council grants that often spill over into those areas. It's been a particularly tough year, as I'm sure you all know, for the performing arts. I'm on the board of the West Coast Winter Music Society and the Tla-o-qui-aht Sound Community Theatre Association. And with the theater closed, and who knows when it's going to be able to reopen, it's really put a crimp in our activities. But we really hope that you know, it's within this year that it will come back so that we can have performing arts again. So again, thanks to the council and to the staff for supporting arts and culture. And I look forward to listening to April's presentation. Thank you.
thank you, Eileen. Moving on, we have 9 items of correspondence. Are there any items that council would like to discuss further? Councillor Chalmers?
Hi, I'd like to address 7.7 if anybody wants to address one further ahead, or should I just go straight?
Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to discuss any other items?
7.7 is on the sick leave if anybody doesn't have the agenda in front of them.
Yeah. Okay,
So
it's over to you.
okay, I would like council to support this in writing a letter to the NDP Minister of Labour, Minister Harry Bains. I'd like to support 7 days, 6 leave. I think we've seen it a lot with the pandemic, how important it is for people to be able to stay home. In this community here, the majority of our workers are service industry that don't have a collective agreement and don't have the ability to pay their bills if they're not coming into work sick. And I think it's something that we can champion, and this last year has really shown a need for it. I know back in May, MP Gord Johns had put forward so that with the Canadian Sickness Recovery Benefit Plan and how beneficial that's been. And I think this last year has really brought forward the need for this.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
Sure. Does anybody have any more comments on that before I? Okay, I will move that council writes a letter to the to the Minister Harry Bains, the Minister of Labour, to support looking into employment standards, including about including sick pay in the Employment Standards Act for 7 days paid leave. Does that work for
Okay,
you?
do we have a seconder? Councillor Steer. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, a motion is carried. Okay, moving on to presentations and reports.
Sorry,
Item.
Councillor has.
Oh. Councillor Steer.
Thank you. I did want to speak to correspondence 7.8.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, that was a letter from Sayamaso requesting a collaborative a regional meeting that he would like the participation of a set number of people, and the District of Tofino was invited into that discussion. There was no particular date set at this time, but if council would agree to that, that we would have to be part of that discussion.
Councillor Steer, are you referring to 7.8 or 7.9?
Sorry, 7.9. I'm sorry.
Everybody
it down
understand that? Councillor Chalmers, you're muted.
Nope, sorry, I got ahead of myself. I will second that.
So we'd like to repeat the motion again.
To participate in the regional meeting with Tla-o-qui-aht First Nations regarding the herring marine lanes.
Okay. That was moved by Councillor Steer, seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any further discussion? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it's a member of council to participate, or acting mayor or mayor if it happens after the election, or staff member.
So I think, Councillor Anderson, the discussion's probably going to be coming sooner than later because herring will be spawning very soon here. So I suspect it probably will be initiated before council will elect a new councillor and mayor. There might be some expediency to it. It doesn't indicate whether it would be acting mayor or a councillor. I think that would be open for council for participation.
Councillor Anderson.
I would suggest, Councillor Steer, that you might be the most appropriate person to communicate this, being on the Harbour Authority and more in touch with issues on the water, and especially concerning boat traffic and some of the stuff that the letter addresses.
I thought I might be the most appropriate, but I didn't want to make that assumption. But I'd certainly be willing to participate in that conversation.
I think Councillor Steer would be the best person. Where I come from, we eat herring. We don't use it as bait. So do we need a motion on that for Councillor Steer? And this is addressed to the CAO.
No, when as this matter kind of makes its way through the system, we'll advise Councillor Steer. Just for council's information, there's been a little bit of traffic on this issue in the last little while, and it seems like the regional salmon roundtable, if I'm calling it the right thing, is going to take this issue on very shortly. So we'll communicate with Mr. Masso that the district would like to have an opportunity to participate at least in that meeting of the salmon roundtable.
Councillor Steer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McPherson. Yeah, the West Coast Aquatic, I was in conversation with their executive director, and those conversations were being initiated through that level. They're a more regional advisory body that one of the underneath that is the salmon roundtables. So that would be great. And if I'm on the board of West Coast Aquatic through the ACRD, so it might be that natural progression there. So thanks.
Okay, now can we move on to section 8? No, we can't.
Sorry,
Councillor Chalmers.
Sorry, I'd also like us to write a letter of support for the Coastal Restoration Society. They've asked for that in their applications for grants. So I'll move that unless anybody has any questions.
Which item number?
Sorry,
7.6.
Yeah, so the Coastal Restoration Society is seeking support for their application. They are submitting for coastal cleanup. Do you need more for that? Oh,
No, just need a seconder. Councillor Steer seconded it. Any further discussion? Call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried.
I think we should.
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I think we should also address the correspondence from Dennis Douglas, item 7.4. I believe a letter of support was requested there as well, or?
Okay, so moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by the letter of support, Councillor Steer. Any discussion? Councillor Chalmers is looking quizzical.
I'm just,
No, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried. Final call, anything else? Now we'll move on. Presentations and reports. 8.1, District of Tofino logo and brand refresh. Do we have a presentation from April on this? Or Nyla? No, Elise.
Mayor, hi. I'm going to introduce a presentation, so I'll just sort of preface a presentation from Sarah Tal-o-qui-aht and Therese Mickelson, who have been developing the logo project with us over the last few months. The purpose of the report is to provide more context and background to the presentation of two updated and refreshed logo options stemming from the logo concept that was selected by the Committee of the Whole back in December of 2020. The two options have been modified slightly based on the discussion at that committee meeting, and I'm going to pass it over to consultants Therese and Sarah to present a summary of the committee's comments and how the two options reflect that input while maintaining the brand strategy for the District of Tofino. If council has any questions about the report, I'll be available as well at the end of the presentation. So Therese, you can feel free to share your screen at any moment.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to pull it up here. Just give me a moment if you don't mind. All right. So thank you very much. We're very happy to be back here with the revised design based on the input we received from the Committee of the Whole. It was actually extremely helpful to us because the committee gave us direction to look at concept one and incorporate some of the feedback that you gave us on how to take that first concept and come back with we've actually come back with two refreshed options for you to choose that are both still based on that initial concept, but you'll see they each have a distinct look while maintaining the integrity of the themes that we would highlight with this particular concept. So I'm going to run through with you just very quickly the key themes of what we heard. And then Sarah, the expert here on the design, she's going to go through with us what she did in terms of taking your feedback and then applying it to these updated options. So just a quick review here of the initial design. What you gave or what we got from the committee was direction to move ahead with concept one, which is the one I'm showing you here, which was great because it gave us a nice focused direction from the committee, but there was also from very consistent comments actually from the members of the committee about what they wanted to see adjusted. So just as a refresher, this is what the initial concept one looked like in both its horizontal.
I'm not sure that we're seeing your screen move along in the presentation. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor and Council, but I'm seeing the first slide only of the brand refresh and revised design presentation.
Yeah, I've been moving along. So what do you think we should do? It's obviously a bit of a technical glitch, Elise. So do you think it would work better if you pulled up the presentation on yours, or do you want me to try to stop share and reshare?
Why don't you try and reshare again while I pull up that presentation on my end, and maybe yours will work before I get to it.
Are you seeing it okay?
Yes, that worked just fine.
Okay, so yeah, it's just some kind of weird technical thing. So I'll just go back. I'll go up one page just because of the concept. Oops, page up one, just to show you again that we've developed it in the horizontal as well as vertical, as well as what we call reverse. That's where it's white, as well as black and white options. So what we heard from the committee when we presented, in addition to this direction to kind of move it forward with adaptations to concept one, is there was a very consistent feedback that the font or typography, as we call it, wasn't fitting. There was a feeling that the embellishment of it felt a little bit too whimsical or quirky, and in the sense of it being for a government organization. There was concerns about the font in terms of the spacing and that kind of thing. So we really needed to look at the typography to find something that would work better still within this concept. We also heard back on the graphics, some of the consistent comments we heard around there was to look at the twin island peaks so that they're more representative of the view from town, and also to get rid of that impression of lips that once is seen is impossible to unsee. So, we were actually very pleased that that was flagged. and to look at how then we can also make changes. Because the other thing that was flagged was the concern about how, as you'll see on this particular one, we had the contour lines and the drainage lines are those white lines, which was pointed out was a great way of getting some of those design elements, but there was concern that the way they're represented right now may actually look a bit like ski hills or logging roads. So we received some really good direct feedback from the committee on both the typography and the graphic element, and then have taken that to look back to, okay, how can we come back with two options for you to look at? So that's what we're going to present next. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, because Sarah really is the expert here on the different concepts that she's worked out. And she'll explain to you how she has looked at the different typography and made some adjustments to the graphic to reflect your feedback. Sarah, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. So this is concept 1A. So what we did here, it's obviously this still overall the same picture that we're looking at, but I adjusted the islands and sort of the scale and the details and sort of the placement to try to, one, eliminate the lips, and also to better reflect the view from town, sort of through the varying heights. And then the big flip, though, was that I changed the contour lines from being the light color, which was a tint of the green, to being the dark sort of brownish black color that it makes up the rest of the logo and the frame. And I think this does a lot to sort of emphasize that they're just a shadow or a shade instead of being misconstrued as something else, some kind of a highlight or a road. And then on the typography, I have tightened up the letter spacing significantly and eliminated sort of all the decorative elements on the T and the N. I did keep a little bit of sort of variable baseline in the word Tofino, just because it helps to sort of keep it looking a little bit custom when we show it. I think it's on the next slide there, Therese, when we show it as just a word mark. No, sorry, it'll be the next one. And so it keeps sort of a security feature there. When you need to use the logo at small sizes and knock off the symbol, you want to have something a little bit still custom about it, so it doesn't just feel like it was typed down on a computer. It gives it a little bit of something unique. So when we go through the remaining slides of the samples, it just shows you nothing changed too much in terms of how it was applied within the samples. It just sort of gives you good context to see it in place. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Therese.
Just that it continues to be very, with the balance of the fonts, I think it's actually still very distinctive. You can still very clearly see the District of Tofino, not just as a word mark, but when it's working with the graphic. And it still represents, as we said, some of those brand elements that we looked at for those key themes around a community as calm and cozy, magical, natural, remote, and as an organization, compassionate, responsible, kind of that inclusive, as well as your values. So it still has that distinctness. And of course, it also still works very small or very large. So we maintained all of those elements that we identified as core needs for why the brand refresh, but made those adaptations to reflect the feedback we received. So I think if it's all right, I think what we'll do is we'll move on to the option B, that's the second refinement of concept 1.
Yeah, so this is just a different iteration, sort of using a little bit of the elements from the previous presentation, concept 2, which was the font here is the Tofino Sans font, and then sort of changing the black color to more of a blue black instead of a brown black, just to sort of pull over like a little bit of the features from the second concept to sort of show you what would happen if we pulled the two things together. And in this one as well, I've cut off the bottom of the circle. This allows the symbol to sort of anchor better onto the word mark. And it reflects a little bit more of sort of the original logo that you're currently using, because the circle is not a full circle in that logo as well. And then to give the type sort of a little bit of a custom feature, I've extended the bar across the T and it helps to sort of fill in a little bit of space there. Yeah, and other than that, it's stayed the same. So nothing else inside the logo symbol itself has changed.
And just as a reminder for council, that the reason why we do these adaptations is in part for the look and feel, that it's distinct, but it's also a security measure. Then it's not easy for someone to just grab a similar font and fake your logo to use it for inappropriate means. So there's a design, a creative aspect to it, but there's also a security aspect to it. See, this is the logo. I'll keep going now, Sarah.
Yeah. And when you change the font, it does sort of change the mood a little bit. So it kind of feels a little bit more maybe sporty, or reflects those key themes that we went through initially, just in a slightly different way. So some of the words are there: fresh, honest, welcoming. Those were all sort of the key words that we used.
And with the slight adaptation with the font color, like the logo font color, there's a slight adaptation in the color scheme for the blue tint instead of a brown, hey?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the applications.
So again, just showing you how the features can be used.
One thing to highlight on this one, do you want to explain the use of the button on the social media?
Yeah, so on social media avatars, it's quite common to encounter that they actually are a circle. So in this case, what we've done is allowed sort of a social instance of the logo where we would add a little bit of fill the circle back in with the blue black at the bottom, just so that you wouldn't have like the appearance of sort of a cut off piece there.
So side by side, what the two refreshed options of concept one look like. So the one is kind of got that brown hint, the other has kind of got the more bluish hint to it. And then here's the side by side as well with the horizontal view of the logo. And then if you have any questions.
Thank you. Yeah. Any questions for Therese and Sarah, council? Councillor Anderson, you tend to be our resident artist. Huh?
Well, I like them both pretty well equally. So I think that my first choice was the B, because the lines are just slightly heavier. It looks more grounded. So that was my first choice. Looking at it again, I'm leaning a little bit towards A, but they're very similar. So I think I would go with B if it was my choice. Just the flat bottom, I think, is a bit of more of a nod to our past logo, and overall the heavier lines. The font is just slightly thicker. It just looks more grounded overall.
Yeah.
Hey, Councillor Chalmers, your opinion?
Yeah, I thought you guys did a great job listening to the feedback, and I also really equally liked them both. I flipped back and forth a few times, and I think in the end, when it comes down to it, I'll agree with Councillor Anderson, the B. I like the blues. I like the Tofino in the first one, but overall, I think I like the second one as well.
Councillor Steer?
Yeah, I like the original one, so I'm not sure what to do. I'm just kidding. I'm just going to, it was eloquently spoken by both Councillors Chalmers and Anderson, and I will go with B as well.
That's good. I favoured B, and I was getting prepared to cut Councillor Anderson off when he started wavering back to A. So I think you can take it that we're in favour of B unanimously. Someone would like to make a motion to that effect? Or a recommendation?
Okay, I will move that council supports the use and for going forward of the option B for the District of Tofino's logo update.
Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favour? None opposed, a motion is carried.
Thank you very
Wow.
much.
Thanks for the presentation, Therese and Sarah.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Okay, moving on to item 8.2, Arts, Culture and Heritage Grant Policy, Event Support Grant Policy, and Events, Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee Establishment. Report from Public Spaces, Cultural and Visitor Initiatives. So is this April?
Yes, it is me, and I'm just going to try and share my screen.
Okay. Okay, we can see your screen. There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. So the district currently offers 3 grant streams, and I have them here in front of you: council grants, arts and culture grants, and event support grants. And prior to these, council would receive funding requests throughout the year for various community initiatives and would respond to these individually. And in order to create a more level playing field, all requests, council opted to consider all requests at one time and within an identified budget. Policies for both council grants and arts and culture grants were developed. And in 2013, the event grant stream was added in order to enable the district to distribute RMI, or Resort Municipality Initiative funds, to events that met this criteria. In recent years, council has expressed a certain level of discomfort with the existing granting process for both arts and culture grants and event support grants. And these concerns have included a lack of clarity on the maximum funding amount per application, a desire to see the evaluation of the applications based on greater subject matter expertise, and the need for just a general overall policy update to better align with current plans and strategies. The current granting process for arts and culture and for event granting was reviewed in late 2019-2020 by the Events, Arts, Culture and Heritage Working Group as part of a facilitated workshop, and recommendations were made for improvements to both of these grant programs. And based on that input, staff is bringing forward those recommendations today for updated policies, as well as the establishment of a new select committee of council. To make my presentation more interesting, I'm going to shamelessly plug some of our events and programs that have been funded by both the arts and culture and event granting streams while I continue to talk about policies. So currently both funding programs are awarded annually and provide welcome funding for a wide variety of community organizations and groups to hold community programs and events. There's just a few there. And funding from the municipality is often the critical foundation from which local organizations are able to demonstrate community support to outside funders in order to leverage additional funds in support of their project or event. So it's kind of their core funding, and that allows them to go out and find more funding because they have the support of the municipality. Both grant streams are typically, although not always, oversubscribed, and council's put in the difficult position of evaluating the artistic merit, or in the case of the RMI grants, the tourism value of applications, and determining what amount of the requested funding should be awarded. The district has done considerable work over the past several years to determine how best to support these sectors. And a number of plans and strategies have been developed that help inform the proposed policy changes. So in addition to the development of a heritage master plan and an arts and culture master plan in 2014, the district completed an event strategy in 2015, and in 2018 undertook development of a 3-year action plan for Tofino's arts, culture, and heritage sectors. A key recommendation of that plan was the establishment of an advisory body that would help represent the sector. In April of 2019, the Events, Arts, Culture, and Heritage, or EACH working group, it actually started out as the AIC working group, but we didn't like that name because it didn't sound very fun, was established for a term of 18 months, and that would align with the implementation of the plan. And that term was later extended through to May of this year because of COVID-19, difficulties getting together and meeting in person, and just sort of a general pause that was felt throughout the community for a number of months. Proposed policy changes include the improved alignment of both policies with current district plans and strategies, clarified funding requirements, and perhaps most significantly, a move to seeing the funding applications peer-reviewed by an advisory committee to council that is representative of the sectors themselves. And that's in place of council having to deliberate as to the merit of these applications themselves. So this select committee of council would replace the EACH working group and would better formalize their role. And the EACH advisory committee would be responsible for both evaluating both grant applications, both streams, and making a recommendation to council on how those funds would be awarded. Council would receive the committee's recommendations and award based on those recommendations. And this is similar to how the Public Art Advisory Committee has operated and successfully has been able to make those recommendations to council, where council essentially ratifies the recommendation of the committee that they have established for this purpose. And while the primary function of the committee would be to review and recommend the allocation of funds through these two grant streams, council may also make recommendations, or they may also make recommendations to council on matters related to events, arts, culture, and heritage, and council may also refer such matters to the committee for their input as needed. The committee is proposed to be made up of 7 members as follows, which would include 1 council member to serve as chair, and an alternate would also need to be appointed should the chair be absent. So just to circle back to where we started, there's the 3 streams. We've discussed these 2. Council would continue to award council grants, whereas these 2 streams, council would receive the recommendations of the committee and essentially ratify or endorse those recommendations. Council does have their opportunity to kind of stick their foot in the door should they feel the need, but the idea is that they establish the committee for this purpose and accept their recommendations. These updated policies would provide increased clarity to applicants regarding the granting process, greater transparency to the community regarding how funding is awarded by council, and the updated process using the committee would engage these sectors in a more meaningful way through peer review of funding applications via the proposed Events, Arts, Culture, and Heritage Advisory Committee. That concludes the presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions if council has any.
Thank you, April. Any questions for April? I have a question, April, while everybody else is thinking. I know you want a councillor to sit on this committee. When do you expect to establish this committee?
So if council chooses to support the recommendations in the report, and I know there's a lot of them, I don't think I've ever written a report with so many recommendations. It's a bit of a long-winded one. Staff would seek put out a call for committee members right away and concurrently run the call for applications. So we'd be looking for a council appointment, if not today, within that time frame. Okay,
the reason I asked, I was wondering whether we should just defer that appointment of a councillor until such time we have a full complement of council. What's your feeling on that?
I think that's council's decision, whether they feel like they would like to appoint someone today or if you would like to wait for a period of time.
What does the rest of council think on that? Councillor Anderson.
Thanks, April. It's a lot of work to pull this together. I'm I guess my question is just around timing. If we wait until after the election and council members are sort of up to speed, how does that play out time-wise with completing the budget and then sort of being responsible for any grant applications that might have already arrived? And so any comments you have on what the expectations are of any council grants that are already applied for, and sort of what the budget process might need in terms of getting recommendations about those grants forwarded to that.
So through the chair, I think in a typical year, we would like to have the application for these funds up and running already. This being a year where we are changing the way the policy, we're changing the policies, and being a COVID year, things are a little different in terms of how these events and arts and culture projects can operate. So I think that I would be hesitant to wait until a new council is oriented and up and running before rolling out the grant process. So I guess now that you're asking me the question, I think it would be better to appoint somebody today, and that could be revisited at a later date if needed.
Councillor Chalmers?
I agree with April, and I think we've had enough stops and starts in this term that it'd be nice to get moving. And I did speak with Councillor Anderson to see if he was interested before, and he did have some interest. So if that continues, I'd be in support of that.
Yeah, I'm in support of Councillor Anderson. I tell you right now, I am not interested, but Councillor Steer, are you interested?
Actually, Acting Mayor McMaster, I thought you were a shoo-in for this one, but if Councillor Anderson, I support Councillor Anderson, and I do agree that we should move on this right away.
Yeah. Well, I would support Councillor Anderson, but I would like to defer the secondary person till we get the new council, if that's acceptable.
I would
and we don't have to appoint that second person anyway, so the alternate. Okay, so who wants to start moving the recommendations? Councillor Chalmers.
Sure. I'll move that the District of Tofino Arts, Culture and Heritage Grant Policy adopted January 10th, 2017 be repealed, and that the District of Tofino Arts, Culture and Heritage Grant Policy attached as Appendix 1 to the staff report dated February 9th, 2021 be adopted.
Seconder, Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed? Motion carried.
I'll move that the District of Tofino Event Support Grant Policy adopted October 13th, 2015 be repealed, and that the District of Tofino Event Support Grant Policy attached as Appendix 2 to the staff report dated February 9th, 2021 be adopted.
Okay.
Seconder, Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? Call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed? Motion carried.
I'll move that the select committee to be known as the Events, Arts, Culture and Heritage Advisory Committee be established, and that the terms of reference attached as Appendix 3 to the staff report dated February 9th, 2021 be approved, and that Councillor Al Anderson be appointed to the Events, Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee.
Seconder, Councillor Steer. Any further discussion? All those in favour? None opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, April.
Thank you.
Okay, item 8.3, develop variance permit, Tofino Housing Corporation, 700 Sharp Road, report from Community Sustainability. Hi, Peter.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'll just be sharing my screen quickly. So hopefully we're all looking at a presentation related to the development variance permit application that's been submitted for the property at 700 Sharp Road. So this will be the first development variance permit that we consider this year. We're looking to vary the District of Tofino's zoning bylaw. There's two variances that are being requested by the applicant to the zoning bylaw. The first is to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 3.3 meters to 0 meters for an accessory structure, and this would apply only to the specific accessory structure as outlined in the attached plans to the permit. And then we would also be considering increasing the maximum lot coverage from 27% to 31%. So with regard to that second variance being requested, the CAO put a note in the staff reports outlining that originally the bylaw for this particular property that was considered approximately a year and a half ago by council was looking at a maximum lot coverage of 27%. The applicants had asked that to be changed to 30%, which it was changed, and somewhere along the way as the bylaw was being adopted, the original bylaw was actually inserted into the staff report. There's some administrative mix-up there, and so it's just worth noting that we should be considering increasing the maximum lot coverage from 30% to 31%, but due to the administrative mistake, it's a slightly larger percentage increase. The reason for this development variance permit is that aspects of the proposed development have been changed from the proposed design presented at rezoning to the final design stage. This is not uncommon for these kinds of developments. As the construction level design drawings kind of become finalized and working with various engineers and other subcontractors, it becomes clear that occasionally slight variations to the design are necessary, and that's what's happened in this case. So not an uncommon thing when looking at specific developments for specific properties. So the property in question, I'm sure we are all aware, we've considered this property a few times over the last year and a half or so. 700 Sharp Road is approximately halfway down Sharp Road between Pacific Rim Highway and the Tofino Inlet. This is the current layout. This is actually the construction level layout. This is what the applicant has submitted for building permit purposes. The overall coverage of the lot will be 31% or just under 31%, I should note. The specific structure that's going to require a 0 meter front lot line setback is in the northeast corner of the lot. That's the top right corner of the image you're looking at, kind of outlined in red. So this is a accessory building that's designed to store both garbage receptacles and bicycles. It's a fairly simple structure. It does not have stick frame insulated sided walls. It's actually just kind of sided with, my understanding is, horizontal slats. So a fairly simple structure, 1 story, not a very large egregious structure in any way. It was originally separated into 2 different structures, and then during the final design stage, it appeared that it would work better to house both the bicycle storage and the garbage storage together, and it was located in that place on the property. So taking a quick look at some of the criteria we use to evaluate these development variance permit applications to ensure some consistency across them. Regarding the form and character of the street area or neighborhoods, this was primarily considered during the rezoning stage. So the actual variance that we're considering today will not be a large departure from what was considered at rezoning. So the development itself will change the form and character of the street area neighborhood, but this variance will not further contribute to that. Taking a look at some of the natural features and ecological functions, topography of the lot, again, the variance will not have a significant impact on any of this. A riparian development permit has already been issued in support of the project. This was considered as well during the rezoning phase through a full registered professional biologist report that was presented to council. Solar exposure doesn't appear to be particularly applicable to this variance. We're not considering an insulated structure. This is a storage structure only. So energy requirements are not anticipated to be very big in any case. Privacy, front yard setback is going to be relaxed. Staff do not feel that this will be a major impact to privacy of the surrounding area. This isn't a habitable area. This isn't a habitable structure. It's an accessory storage structure. So will likely not in a significant way impact the privacy of neighboring properties. Views from neighboring properties through this variance will likely not be impacted in any significant manner. The actual project itself will, of course, change the character of the street and maybe impact the views from neighboring properties. But the variance that we are considering today should not do so in any significant manner. The variance is also intended to work in some flexibility in the overall building design, overall site design, but still stay in line with the goals of the zone that was approved by council. Comments from nearby property owners were solicited through the standard notification procedures. That notification went out on January 29th. We received 2 responses. Mostly they were just looking for information. Once we gave them that information, there was no opposition from any of the properties notified. Staff are recommending approval. Other options would be to refuse the application or defer the application to a later date. That's the end of the presentation. If there are any questions, comments, I'd be happy to speak to them. Thanks.
Any questions to Peter? Councillor Chalmers.
Hi, thank you for that, Peter. Can you see the garbage construction structure from the road, or will it be kind of hidden behind the bushes?
At this point, it's a little bit difficult to know because I'm not sure exactly. From the plans, I would say that you could, if you are, suppose you're standing on Sharp Road, when I've been to the site and you're looking in there, there's recently been some clearing done and it will be likely visible from the road. However, at the end of the project and once some of the vegetation begins to grow back, I would anticipate that it's not a significant kind of sight from the road.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Someone like to move the recommendations?
Will I just have to pull it up again?
I could move it. I would move that council approve development variance permit number 01-21 to vary the District of Tofino zoning bylaw 770, 1997 for Lot 1, District Lot 132, Tla-o-qui-aht District Plan 33516 as follows. Vary Part 41N.5 of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770, 1997 to reduce the minimum front yard setback from 3.3 meters to 0 meters for an accessory structure, and vary Part 41N.6 of the District of Tofino zoning bylaw number 770, 1997 to increase the maximum lot coverage from 27% to 31%.
Have a seconder? Councillor Chalmers. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried. Thank you, Peter, and I believe you're staying around for the item 8.4, Housing Agreement Bylaw, Pacific Sands Resort, 1421 Pacific Rim Highway.
Thank you. I'll be sharing my screen again for this one. So this is a housing agreement bylaw associated with some staff housing that's currently under construction or will be under construction, I should say, at Pacific Sands. That's at 1421 Pacific Rim Highway. So housing agreements have been a fairly common tool that we've used in conjunction with a lot of private developments as well as development done by the THC. The advantage to the applicant is that they receive a 50% reduction on the applicable DCC fees in association with the outline in our DCC bylaw. And the advantage to the district through these housing agreements is that we secure more housing stock for the long term. A development permit has been issued for the staff accommodations on the subject property. A building permit is expected to be issued fairly shortly once the housing agreement is completed. As noted, this housing bylaw will allow a reduction in the DCC fees associated with the staff housing. And the intent of this housing bylaw is to regulate who can rent the units and how they can use it, how the units may be used. It does not stipulate maximum rent. So this is fairly common for private staff housing developments. We don't ask private developers to, or currently I should say, we don't ask private developers to adhere to maximum rent limitations in the same way that we have asked THC developments to do so. So the development is intended to provide housing for staff of Pacific Sands, their partners and immediate family, as applicable, should partners and immediate family need housing in those areas. It's not intended as a large-scale affordable housing project, but it's essentially this housing agreement is designed to ensure that the staff units are really only used by employed staff. They can't be used for short-term tourism accommodation or long-term rental to people who are not employed by Pacific Sands. Or otherwise are not permitted through this housing agreement. So this is a very similar housing agreement to one that was considered a few months ago for Middle Beach Lodge in Bella Pacifica. This is Bylaw 1305. Essentially, this bylaw will give the district the authority to enter into the housing agreement that's attached to the staff report attached to the bylaw itself. Once this bylaw is completed, staff will then work with Mayor and the CAO to enter into this housing agreement. The highlights of the housing agreement really include kind of a couple of main things that have been outlined. Essentially, the units will be used for staff accommodation only. They can't be used for tourism accommodation of any kind, and they can't be used for long-term rental to folks who are not employed by Pacific Sands or their family members. Adoption of this bylaw would be anticipated at a future council meeting, quite likely the next council meeting, should the application move forward. So the options today would be to grant first, second, and third readings to the proposed bylaw, grant first, second, and third readings as amended, reject or refuse the application, defer or otherwise deal with the application. Staff are recommending the first option. So that's the end of this presentation. If there are any questions or comments, I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions for Peter? Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, I'm glad to see that employers are creating more staff housing. I'm just wondering if these are coming forward just of their own free will, or is there anything the district is doing to kind of encourage this?
These housing agreements are, I think I would say, coming forward as a result of the option in the DCC bylaw for a 50% reduction in DCC fees. So that policy or that approach appears to be working. I would also say that in speaking with, there's a couple other compelling reasons why businesses might be building staff accommodation. One is within the zoning bylaw, we actually do have requirements for staff accommodation in association with the number of units at resorts or other tourism commercial accommodation providers. And I would say the other is in my conversations with resort owners and operators, they just are quite desperately in need of staff accommodation, and it's become an integral part of their business strategy.
Thank you.
Any further questions for Peter? Seeing none, would someone like to move the recommendation?
Sure, I'll move that the District of Tofino Housing Agreement Bylaw number 1305/2021 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time.
Have a seconder? Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried. Moving on to item 8.5. It's committee of the whole. We have minutes and a number of recommendations. I will move from the chair that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held February 1, 2021 be received. Have a seconder? Councillor Chalmers. All those in favour? Unopposed? Move receipt. I'll move the recommendation that staff be directed to increase fires for beach fire infractions by summer 2021. Have a seconder? Councillor Chalmers. Any discussion? All those in favour? Unopposed? Motion carried. I will move that staff be directed to reduce the hours permitted for outdoor burning on public property by summer 2021. Have a seconder? Councillor Chalmers. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried. I will move that staff be directed to increase and improve public signage related to beach fires by summer 2021 to ensure that the regulations are clear, concise, consistent and highly visible. Have a seconder? Councillor Anderson. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried. Finally, I'll move that staff be directed to increase bylaw enforcement resources directed to beach fire regulations. Seconded by Councillor Chalmers. All those in favour? None opposed, motion carried. Did I miss anything? No. Okay, moving on to item 8.6, Volunteer Recognition Committee. I'll move receipt of the minutes of the Volunteer Recognition Committee held February 2, 2021. Have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favour? None opposed? Carried. From the chair, I'll move that the minutes of the Tofino Recreation Commission meeting held January 20, 2021 be received. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chalmers. Any discussion? All those in favour? Unopposed, motion carried. Item 9.1, District of Tofino Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1169, 2012 for adoption, 200 Campbell Street, Duffin, Cove. Do we have, is there a presentation on this or anything? Peter's came up.
I don't have a presentation prepared for this, but I'm happy to answer any questions. This is the adoption of the zoning bylaw for the property at 200 Campbell Street. It's been ongoing since, I believe, 2012. So this is the end of a fairly significant and lengthy process. They were at third reading, or the last time it appeared at third reading, I should say, as it's done that a few times. There were three conditions that council requested before adoption be granted. One was the receipt of a community amenity contribution in the amount of around $60,000. I don't know the exact amount off the top of my head, but that has been received. The second was a covenant in place that protected a significant part of the vegetation around the foreshore, as well as a few other areas of the property. That covenant has been signed and will be registered following adoption of the zoning bylaw. And the third requirement was kind of an understanding of the trees that were to be saved on the property and the addition of those trees to the significant tree bylaw. So we have only recently kind of come to a final agreement with the applicant as to which trees will be, which trees in particular will be protected on the property. And those will be added to the significant tree bylaw probably starting at the next council meeting. Because that is sort of part of our process, it does not necessarily affect the adoption of this particular rezoning. More important was just sort of the agreement between the two parties as to which trees were to be preserved, and then we will be adding to them to our bylaw shortly.
Thanks, Peter. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I just I did drive by the property just for a look, and I noticed that they had marked, they have signage that looks to me like they've claimed the street parking as their parking. Is that been checked into, or do we need to look into that? Perhaps that is their property, I'm not sure. But anyways, it to me, it looks like the parking on Campbell Street has been designated as their parking with their signage. So that's maybe a question to be answered another day, but I don't think it should hold up adoption of this.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not aware of that, but I'm happy to kind of discuss with bylaw services and to see what's happening down there. The one other thing that I would mention is that Mr. Work, our Director of Infrastructure and Public Works, has been very keen to require developers and any contractors to develop parking plans related to any construction work or any development work that's happening on a specific property. So prior to the granting of a building permit along with the works and services agreement, we would require a full parking plan, not just for the final built out development, which of course has to have parking on site, but a parking plan for the construction phase as well, where the various contractors, trucks and equipment are going to go so that they don't clog up that end of Campbell Street or compromise access to other neighboring properties.
Okay, thanks. Maybe we came to an agreement just for delivery while it was under construction or something. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Any further questions for Peter? Someone like to move the recommendation?
Sure, I'll move that the District of Tofino zoning amendment bylaw number 1169/2012 be adopted.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favour? None opposed, motion is carried. Moving on, item 10, business initiated by council members. That's me. I attended the Board of Trustees annual general meeting at the Vancouver Regional Library, Vancouver Island Regional Library on January 30th. Two things. The bad news, I was elected to the executive committee, so I'm one of the 9 members at large. And the second thing, which is more a cursory warning, as you know, I've been pounding the table with council that we need to come up with a site as soon as possible if we expect to get a new library. At the AGM, when it was mentioned that VRL was in discussions with Tofino and was waiting on a site decision, a certain member had the audacity to suggest that they didn't see the point in putting money into places like Tofino with the onset of the digital age, and why did we need bricks and mortar building? They didn't get a lot of support, but there is an undercurrent there, and I'm a great believer that there's no smoke without fire. So I would just like to mention to council that we need to make a decision on the site as soon as possible. So just bear that in mind. Moving on, any questions before we move on? Oh, yes.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, just with respect to the library, staff will be bringing something to the next committee of the whole that will wrap up some of the site decision as well as the public comment that we received with a recommendation for how to move forward. And certainly at a staff to staff level with the IRL, we're getting the same message that the timing is now very good for us to present a cleared and serviced site. So yes, the time is right on that. One other thing, if I may, I noticed that when the recommendations from committee of the whole were forwarded to council, there actually is a key recommendation that was missing. So if with council's indulgence, just add that recommendation that staff be directed to amend outdoor burning regulations to allow only the use of portable outdoor fire pits or appliances in place of wood burning beach fires on public property by summer 2021.
Yeah, I wondered where that one had gone to.
I had the same moment that you did, I believe, looking for, it seemed like something was missing.
I will move that recommendation. Do you have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any further discussion? And I'll call the vote. All those in favour? Okay, motion carried.
Thank you.
I thought there was something suspicious the way it was left out there. Okay, Elise, do we have any questions from the public in the Q&A?
Through the mayor, no one has signed up for the question and answer period.
Okay, would someone like to move going into camera?
I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91A, B, and C and I of the community charter to discuss matters relating to personal information of individuals being considered for a municipal award, personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employer, or employee or agent, employee relations, and litigation or potential litigation affecting the municipality.
Seconder? All those in favour? Motion carried. I'd like to move for a 1 minute recess. Otherwise, I'm going to switch my screen off and just disappear. 1 minute.